And once you actually are able to make that move, then this idea of moving towards a company like InterNAP, where if I'm a company in Las Vegas and I have a data center here and one somewhere else, well, the optimization is a very difficult challenge in the optimization of routing. So you're saying you can, not essentially guarantee, but optimize the performance of wherever your employees happen to be globally, and they'll be able to access the application, find the closest InterNAP pop.
I think that's actually a great point. Is many companies, as they grow, it's becoming logical to not have their applications resident at a home office per se. They may have actually regulatory compliance reasons to put it in a physically secured, highly up co-location facility or data center. But at the same time, like you said, you want to have optimal performance to users that may be around the world. If you're a CIO, those may be internal users predominantly. If you're a CTO, it's maybe everybody on the internet is consuming your application. So the ability to optimize egress routing from a data center to support both user types is important.
Yeah, sorry?
I was going to say, certainly as people are getting more comfortable with pushing more of the infrastructure out from their own data centers or data closets, that the latency that's now being induced within the application tiers, can cause problems. I mean, the latency from the application server to the end user, and then within the application tiers themselves. And we shouldn't, and we're trying to have a recognition that latency should not be an inhibitor to taking advantage of the cost model and benefits the cloud offers, or this blend of services.
And I think one of the big things that's going to help accelerate momentum to the cloud is obviously right now we're seeing story after story about, hey, we moved to the cloud and now this is our cost in the cloud per VM. And the reality is IT organizations, they really have, depending on how you look at it, potentially a lot of competition in the cloud. If I was a systems administrator, an IT director for a customer environment or for an enterprise environment, then and you're saying, hey, here's your cost per VM. And essentially, I think that's what it's all going to boil down to. And I think one of the areas that's really killing enterprises as they try to move towards private cloud is they're not comfortable with automation. And so what I see is we have these automation platforms creeping their way into the enterprise, and they're used to workflows. First of all, there's a lot of badly defined and poorly defined processes, called Bob for this piece of, and so they really don't have a good workflow and a good process scheme. But then it always comes down to, there's an option in this management software to automate, and everybody still wants to, even if it's largely automated, everyone still wants to touch the button. And I think, having moving to a cloud provider with a trusted brand name, kind of makes that transition easier. It's okay to think that somebody else might be automating it, but when it comes to automating for an enterprise internally, it's more of a challenge. So what are you seeing in the uptake? I mean, there's a lot of different statistics. Gartner's publishing some numbers that a lot of the people that I talk to think are pretty aggressive, but I think they're realistic. What are you seeing in this IT outsourcing to the cloud?
Good question. So one point that I want to make is I don't think that the end conclusion of the cloud coming into popularity is that everything will wind up in the cloud. I think that there are plenty of use cases where having things on dedicated infrastructure in either co-location or managed hosting environment is going to make sense. And I think what we're seeing is there's lots of interest around the cloud. People are trying it out for different use cases. They're finding the right use cases and leaving those use cases in the cloud, whereas they may wind up expanding their use of outsourced providers in other IT deployment flavors like co-location and managed hosting. Great example is you may see lots of software as a service companies or internet start up entirely in the cloud. As they get more successful, it may be more economical and frankly better from an operational standpoint to put part of that infrastructure into co-location or managed hosting, with leaving the bursty parts into the cloud, which is something the cloud is very successful at handling. Similarly, what you may find in the CIO marketplace is they may have virtualized using, let's say, something like VMware. They're looking for a private cloud, but they want the option to explore using public clouds on both VMware and open source hypervisors to work on that cost model. And so I think we're seeing a lot of uptake in the cloud, but people are sort of being intelligent in their uptake in the cloud as they've kind of gotten more used to what it's about. I think they're going to be more intelligent about saying what workloads stay in the cloud and what workloads don't belong in the cloud.
That's very good commentary. And I think I don't have any other questions for right now. Did you have anything else? key differentiators that you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that in InterNAP we do differentiate based on best performance end user and the broadest possible IT deployment platform. We find that both of the CIO and CTO target marketplaces, that's a great set of differentiators to have. People want choices and they want performance, and at InterNAP that's what we're delivering. And we'd highlight our cloud offering that we're announcing here at Interop that gives the broadest possible range from private cloud to dedicated nodes in the VMware public cloud to VMware public cloud to open source hypervisor Zen public cloud. So people are going to value those choices, and like I said earlier, they're going to choose the right places to leave their IT workloads, but value those choices along the way.
I know I said I was done, but just commenting on that point, I mean, I really think the right mix. We've seen over the years a lot of different perspectives on outsourcing, and what I've from companies that basically take their entire IT staff, give them a different badge, and say now you're porting somewhere else, which I think culturally hasn't worked well in the examples that I've seen to where cloud, where we're taking certain functions and able to do it in a modular fashion, like you mentioned. And I think for me that's the right way. We can't do this, we're not comfortable with this today, and I think most importantly is we see the economies of scale in the areas between businesses that are common. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel on how you do, which routing platform that you're running, or if you're running Windows, server and what have you, or the common back office types of things. There's no need to reinvent the wheel there, and you get a lot of economies of scale when you start to centralize those management tools. And where IT departments can really, I think, add value to their business is you start focusing more on line of business applications. And then those is generally like here in Las Vegas, I've seen some of the new gaming applications that are requiring something like 100 gigs from the gaming floor to a data center. Obviously that type of application is not ready to move to a centralized data center model for a while. And so I think that's the ideal. You start getting some of the back office, the common things to a common platform. It's the things that need to be local, and it's a good mix. So I don't think there's a lot of fear. IT departments, if they're doing things right, should have a lot of fear. I think the right method is to be proactive in saying, hey, here's something that we don't do a lot of, or here's something where our cost per VM isn't as low as they can get it. And if they start to proactively engage in that, then they're going to be seen as part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so I think there's plenty of room for both. I mentioned earlier, IT has a competition. I think it's more about embracing the cloud and starting to do what IT does, which is, hey, we know technology a little bit better than the rest of our business, so let's start advising our business as the best method about how to use the cloud.
I think that IT departments want to sort of position themselves as strategic technology advisors to the business. They're, along with that, historically, they've had to manage a lot of the infrastructure directly, which is a very large cost and really a talent burden, and sort of, especially the smaller you are, it's harder to have the specialized resources that for every single aspect of managing an IT deployment. So coming back to your question about what sort of uptake do we see for the cloud, I would actually argue that what we see is a huge uptake for IT outsourcing in general, along the lines of, most IT departments are deciding they don't want to have the infrastructure in-house. The question is, what infrastructure makes sense? In some cases, public cloud makes sense. In some cases, private clouds make sense. In some cases, managed hosting makes sense. In some cases, co-location makes sense. But I think they've pretty much come to the conclusion that unless you're a very large company running your own data center and manage every single aspect of your own IT deployments, does not make either economic sense or really even sense from the standpoint of serving your business to the best possible abilities of your staff.
But I think that's why having the breadth of services becomes one of our key points here, that being backed by the performance network.
And I think where you guys are at right now with avoiding the platform space, I think in the platform as a service, most organizations are not ready to start writing to like a Google App Engine type of environment. It's coming, but I think it's still too far out to where people are not ready to write towards that type of environment.
Well, maybe just to push the question back to you, I mean, certainly our opinion has been, it seems like people become very declarative once they're in essence picking what their language is for that, and that's why we think people have been a little bit hesitant, and why it hasn't quite made sense for us to explore it as well. I mean,